You're listening to Overwatch Contenders Daily, your path to daily news, scores, and insights into the Overwatch League stars of tomorrow. Here's your host, LemonKiwi.
Good morning, Overwatch fans. It's me, LemonKiwi, here for the very first episode of Overwatch Contenders Daily. Hope you guys got to check out episode 0 to kind of get you prepared of what this content is going to be all about, in case you haven't checked out Owl Daily before. But today, I've got a special guest for our very first episode. It's going to be none other than Alex Gillfrost. Gil joining us. In case you don't know who it is, loved Contenders host, caster, personality, overall awesome person. And we're going to be discussing the Group A matches that happened for the North American region yesterday. But first, let's get into some Contenders news. So, some teams have been locked in for the playoffs coming up. Let's talk about Group A. North American and European region have been 100% locked in. So, in order of best seed to worst seed, Gladiators Legion, Toronto Esports, XL2 Academy, and Mayhem Academy move on for North America. For Europe, we've got British Hurricane, Angry Titans, Orglis in Hungary, and Team Gigantes. So, exciting stuff to see how this will turn out later on. China still has 3 matches left to play next week, so the 4 seeds still going to be fought over, but the top 3 seeds have been locked in. Lucky Future Zenith, Team CC, and T1W Esports Club will be moving on to the playoffs for the Chinese region. So in other news, this is more roster-relating things. Emil left Young and Beautiful to join Orglis in Hungary, and in response, Young and Beautiful picked up Saini. And Saini used to play for Envision in the previous Contender season. They actually made it all the way to playoffs, so pretty solid roster moves from both these teams. Another odd roster update for you. Singularity replaced Cave with Huni in the active roster. Unfortunately, it didn't help them clinch the playoff spot they needed, as they lost their match 4-0 to Team Gigante. So that's it for the news. Let's get into the interview with Alex Gillfrost. I'm here today with well-known and loved Contenders personality Alex Gillfrost Gill, which today I learned his last name was Gill, but today I know, right? Today we'll be covering Group A's matches for the North American region. But first, Gillfrost, for people that have not seen you around lately, what have you been up to? How you been?
Well, I've been moving is one big thing that's been happening to me lately. Trying to follow Contenders, of course. But no, I moved down to Dallas here. I'm exploring a new opportunity here with Engage Esports. Still in the production world. I'm managing producer here for a relatively new company. And we're going to be doing a lot of broadcasting and events over the next months and hopefully even past that. But I know we've got some fun stuff coming up here soon. And yeah, no, just trying to follow as much Contenders as I can. I mean, with Overwatch League and Contenders and all these regions, it's definitely been a handful. Yeah,
and speaking of handful, you have ZP as a roommate, right? So you've been getting the inside scoop on the Contenders stuff, right?
Yeah, you know, a pretty good perspective. You know, I will always have questions for him when he comes back, and he's always willing to oblige me.
Well, getting into the details right now of the matches that happened yesterday, we're going to start off with Grizzlies versus Gladiators Legion, where Gladiators took the 3-1, and unfortunately, Grizzlies could not secure the 3-1 or the 4-0 that they needed to clinch the playoff spot. But it was still a great match nonetheless. Actually, the only match that wasn't 4-0, but we saw Grizzlies make a lot of adjustments throughout that match, from Spirit and Zapri swapping Tracer rules, for example, on Horizon Lunar Colony, to Zapri sporting the Sombra, the Widow, the off-tank, even Spirit being like the McCree, the Genji, the Tracer, just a lot of hero pools coming out of these guys. But while as Legions, they're kind of playing this outlaw strategy, just Junkrat Tracer all day. So do you think the amount of adjustments Grizzlies make was part of their lack of footing in the series, or do you think a team that practices a core comp and adjusts the play style to the map has an advantage in the game?
That's a really good question. And I mean, there's so many layers to a question like that, you know, because on one hand, if you know, well, first of all, I can't see a lot of decisions that are being made behind the scenes, but overall, I'd have to say that map to map changing up compositions, of course, is very good. It's good to have multiple tools in your tool belt, and we can see other teams that maybe don't have the same tools we can see how that can be a huge detriment to them. That said, switching within a single map really just it depends on the situation. Largely, you'll see this happen from point to point, but if you're seeing it happen a lot mid-points, it really just means that the game plan that they came with, they've discovered was not the best game plan to be had. And so on one level, of course, that means they didn't bring the right game plan, perhaps, or their opponents just brought a better game plan or something that they didn't expect, which then leads us to the next facet, which is, well, I mean, it is good to be able to make adjustments on the fly as long as they are positive adjustments. And I actually thought a lot of the adjustment that the Grizzlies made mid-point, were actually very good. It didn't always work out for them, but they were trying to adapt to what was being thrown at them. It wasn't necessarily always due to desperation or just grasping at straws trying to find something that works.
I agree. There was a lot of strategies in Grizzlies' book that they were trying to bring out to find an answer to Gladiators Legion. And I thought it was interesting how big of a hero pool that they have. And while Gladiators Legion were always very comfortable on the Junkrat Tracer, and you saw the Genjis come out where you saw Gladiators Legion had to come up with an answer to Grizzlies' answers. So I like this sort of interplay of some teams can play the same comp and win everything, and some teams have a lot of strategies and a lot of pages to their chapters. So speaking of maps that Grizzly took, well, the only map, Nepal, 2-1, started off the series well for them. What would you attribute the keys to success of Grizzlies taking that map and taking their offense strongly in that series?
Yeah, I thought they just got off on the right foot. And this was the one map that they had a game plan coming in, and they actually executed it very well. And it was the right game plan to bring against their opponents. And when when I'm watching Gladiators Legion, Panker and Gods, arguably the best tank duo in Contenders right now. And they are, I mark them with a sense of, they're very, I guess, relaxed, and they're not relaxed. Maybe they are. I hope they're relaxed. Don't stress out, guys.
You don't want to stress map one.
They're not overly aggressive. They pull back when they need to, and they strike when they need to, but they definitely don't know when to put their foot on the gas. But they really disengage quite a bit, and their DPS do as well, and they know how to play back and forth, which has made it very difficult for teams to dive against them. And so on Village, the Grizzlies, knowing that that Panker and Gods being the strong points of this Gladiators Legion team, they bring Spirit on. They brought 3 tanks, and on Village, there's a really enclosed space on the point, and they were able to rotate very quickly onto the point. Now, the risk, of course, behind that is you've got Blasé on the Junkrat, so with all those tanks, you could give up a lot of ult percentage, but they really made that work. They dealt with Panker and Gods, and anytime they tried to press in there, they punished them, and they were able to kind of surprise Gladiators Legion in that sense, and they were able to take Village. They did lose Shrine, and honestly, in that case, it was really just, I feel like Corey was trying to flank a little bit too much, but despite that, Panker and Gods just dictated where the fights were happening, and Gladiators Legion was able to pull that one across. But then we went to Sanctum, and Sanctum I was a little bit worried about Sanctum because I really liked that Grizzlies brought that tank and Reaper setup to Village. Didn't think that would work really on Sanctum, but honestly, Zapre just went nuts, and he carried the team in a lot of regards, and they kind of shut down Blasé. Once again, even though they didn't have the Reaper necessarily, they focused on Panker and Gods. When they came in, they were punishing them, and they were fighting a little bit more on their own terms, and they were able to finally take the map. And so they knew the game plan that they needed to come into the series with, compartmentalize that into individual points, and then executed it well enough to take that one map.
Yeah, I agree that Sanctum was also a map that they were finally finding a way to shut down Blasé on that Junkrat. But then he brought out the Junkrat again and again on other maps where, again, Grizzlies did not have an answer to that. And unfortunately, looked really good on Nepal and then couldn't really get the 4-0 that they needed to get the playoff spot. But let's go into match number 2, XL2 versus last night's Leftovers. The match results not being too surprising there. XL2 came into this match, I think, very confident. And you could tell just by the compositions and the way that they were playing, they were very relaxed, as you had mentioned earlier. because they already had their playoff spot. So one of the examples of the team playing confident was, I think, Mangachu bringing out the May on Horizon Lunar Colony on attack. So do you think May on attack has any value, or do you think the XL2 were playing a little memeish there?
I mean, it's hard not to, see a certain element of memishness.
Memedom.
But realistically, I mean, it does have its place, this May, on that point. I think that the reason that you could call it memeish is that if you expect it and if you practice around it, there are pretty easy ways of shutting it down or of playing around it. So from a strategic perspective, it's not something you can bring all the time. Dive, for instance, is a strategy that, well, it may not work in every single situation. It's not something that can be easily shut down in a universal sense. Whereas the May, you can play around it a little bit. Now, the way that it works really is, first of all, it's a fairly close quarters map, so it lends itself to May because the size of her wall can actually really stanchion off the fights, and you can split up your opponents. And if you can get to the point, that is having a little bit of an issue with Widowmaker in the end there. But no, Mangachu bringing that, it's not totally memeish, and they did end up making it work in the end. I guess another benefit of it, of course, is if you can build up Blizzard by point B, that can really help you take a point on.
Yeah, which was what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And a couple Blizzards came out. They didn't always find the payment that they wanted to with them, but in theory, it can definitely work.
And then for the XL2 match, we saw Nene. I love the Nene memes, by the way. The watch me whip and watch me Nene. Oh, the chat. I love Twitch chat. But they had him out for map 1, but then he was subbed out for Flower. So could you tell me the difference between these two players? I know they both play Tracer, but why would you want Flower over Nene or vice versa?
Well, honestly, the difference in their playstyles can kind of be summed up in their hero pools at large. And I mean, and that's not talking about the actual quality, not rating them as players overall, but Nene, or Nene, however you pronounce it, so I'm going to apologize right now because one or more of those are incorrect. But yeah, really just very much a Tracer main. I think that, you can see a smattering of Soldier 76 and a few other heroes here or there, but really feels most comfortable on that Tracer. And actually, on the other side of things, Flower wouldn't have pegged him as necessarily a Tracer player. I know that, I mean, maybe best known for Genji and maybe Junkrat, I think when he, more recently. But Flower is really known as a one-size-fits-all player. He plays just about every DPS imaginable, and it depends on the circumstance. I mean, we even saw him play Widowmaker very well on Horizon Lunar Colony in match today. And so it really comes down to a pocket knife, a Flower, and really the one-trick pony that is Nene. And, I mean, they're both where you want to put them if you just need your solid Tracer player, and Nene is going to do a really good job for you. But on some of those maps, maybe you want to give them multiple looks, Flower can do the job for you really well.
Yeah, I think Flower's Widow, especially on Dorado and Lunar Colony, just really, really good. I wonder where Nene's Widow is. Maybe that's why they brought Flower, because they needed a solid Widow on those maps. But I agree, Nene plays a really good Tracer in Genji, but maybe they want to give Flower some more playtime. He's that star-studded player everyone's been watching out for, and maybe that pocket knife that the team needs. So I'm looking forward to see how playoffs go with him. But so lead us into our third match, Mayhem Academy versus Toronto Esports. Another 4-0, unfortunately.
Rip.
And I'm going to butcher this guy's name, Axiom. Recent addition for Toronto Esports. I don't know if I said that wrong. I apologize. But Axiom.
Perfect.
It sounds right? He replaced Pumple as the main tank in week 3. So how was his performance to you, and what does he add to the team?
Well, first of all, however you pronounced it, it's still better than the name Pumple. Let's just get that out of the way.
It's like Pimple.
Yeah. We don't need to go any further. But anyway, and I actually
squeeze them out of the team and go for the next one.
Oh God. Oh,
now we're roasting the name. Back to the content.
Yes. And I mean, I don't even necessarily want to talk too much about Pumple, just because we didn't get a solid look from him. I mean, I think he was in for like 2 weeks, and it's really hard to judge a tank's play because so many aspects of tank play, of course, relate to the synergy on the team, communication, leadership as well, especially if you're in that main tank role. And those are things that we really don't know. We can kind of maybe infer some things from watching. But the only real things I'll say about Pumple is that he was a little unremarkable. And that's just to say that it's not like I saw him making a lot of just blatant mistakes, but he didn't seem to be in the right position all the time, especially defensively. He was at his best when, he's diving in with the Tracer and they're being very aggressive, getting to the back line and picking up kills, but he didn't seem to know exactly what to do or where to be when he was just sitting back and defending his back line or waiting for the enemy to engage on them. Once again, it's really hard to say for sure, but one thing that I think Axiom brings is, from watching him the last couple of weeks, is he does feel a little bit more comfortable playing more passively and more defensively. And I think that a lot of that probably does also have to do with how he communicates with the rest of the team. And I definitely think it's a better look for this squad in general. And I'm excited to see, as he continues to integrate, after being with the team for a few weeks, now you can start working on maybe some smaller details and integrating you into the roster to see how he can continue to improve, and thus Toronto Esports can improve.
Well, speaking of improvements, Mayhem, fell short in the series and being 4th seed. They're going to have to face the 1st seed of Group B going into playoffs. So what sort of preparations or improvements, pretend you're Coach Gill for a second. Well, how would you coach Mayhem going into playoffs? What do they need to do?
First of all, that would be a losing team right there.
Oh God!
Maybe someday. No,
it's not gonna be on your resume.
Yeah, that's a difficult one, because Mayhem, it just seems like across the board they don't always know exactly what strategies they need to bring, but it's just so hard to guess on things like that. I think for Mayhem Academy, if I was being really specific, I think that they need to leverage Mikey A little bit more. And when I say that, I'm not saying that they're not leveraging him now, but if, with the LAN potential for Mikey A, he's playing with Ping. He's shown himself to be a dynamite tracer and hit scan player in the past, especially at LAN. And I think that they need to really focus their compositions around potentially how he's going to perform without the ping and lag issues. Across the board, the only other areas of opportunity for them that I think they might need to shore up are communication around ult usage, especially in the supports. I think that I'm trying to remember a specific circumstance. I'm remembering on point B of Horizon Lunar Colony, when they were actually about to take the point, both of their supports, they popped Transcendence and Valkyrie both at the same time, and it was actually when they were ticking up the clock. There was nobody actually at that point contesting. They had just gotten some picks, and then I think it was Nero then came back with a Dragon Blade and ended up wiping them after that. And if you'd had Transcendence, that would have been a different story. So little communication issues like that. So really just make sure you are, scrimming and, communicating and working on some of those smaller details coming into this one, because you're going to be going up against, we actually don't know 100%, probably Fusion University, but it could just as well be Envision. And neither of those teams are going to, they are going to punish you for mistakes like that. So you need to be really focused on not making those decision quality related mistakes.
Yeah, you got to play a perfect game, especially if you're going up the 1st seed. I mean, how many times are you going to see the last seed upset the 1st seed if you're not looking at March Madness? But going into the final question, LNL, who made it through Open Division, went through trials to make it to Contenders, now they're going to drop to trials again with Grizzlies, I would believe. We'll wait for the official announcement. But do you have confidence that LNL and Grizzlies will be able to fight their way back to Contenders through trials?
I would not bet on it, but not because I don't think that they're good enough necessarily. But realistically speaking, who knows what these rosters are going to look like? And I think there's gonna be a lot of retooling. I think they both have really talented players. So like if the core of their lineup stayed together and they maybe just found a few replacements, or if they felt good with the current roster, if they really just scrimmed a lot and worked on improving, then I think they definitely should. They definitely should. But who knows which players are going to be picked up, which players are going to, I guess, stay with them. A lot of big names out there. I think that Kevster was somebody who really spoke to me. I just a lot of hero plays. Unfortunately, you can't rely on hero plays like that if you're going to find victory for last night's leftovers. And then, of course, on Grizzlies, Zapre, and I mean a lot of players, but I'm just looking at Zapre again. He just is somebody that honestly a lot of other teams might be looking at. And so if they can keep their cores together, I would imagine we'd see them. And I'm honestly just excited to see where all these individual players end up going, because there's going to be a shake-up, and I just hope that just all keep on the course and keep putting in the time to someday maybe get into that Overwatch League.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Overwatch League teams might start picking away at the contenders rosters, and somebody needs to fill that spot. So maybe people from Grizzlies or LNL or any other teams that don't make it to playoffs. But even if you don't make it to playoffs, you can make your way back. So I have confidence they'll make it back. I think they got the solid practice from the contenders teams, but the open division teams also got to watch all of their strategies on the big stage, and maybe could have extra time to get ready against those teams. I don't know. I'm excited to see how Trials and Open Division and everything else is going to go. But that will conclude today's very first episode of Overwatch Contenders Daily. Thanks for coming on, Gillfrost. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Really love all these podcasts that y'all are coming out with. And by y'all, I mean
y'all.
Overwatch League Daily as well. So I'm really excited to see where you can go with Overwatch Contenders Daily. Really premium content. Thanks for letting me come on.
Well, I see you're already gotten the y'all in your vocabulary. You're already fitting into Texas. So no, this was Contenders Daily. I'm also LemonKiwi. I will see you guys in 2 days for the next episode of Overwatch Contenders Daily. See ya.